And we're live. Welcome back, everyone, to the latest episode of the Electrek Podcast. As usual, Frederick Lambert coming at you live from Quebec. And I'm joined with the 9 to 5 Mac Electrek slash 9 to 5 network boss man, Seth Wintroud, as usual, coming from you from Vermont. How you doing, Seth?
Oh, I'm still in New York this time.
Oh, you're saying New York, right?
Yeah,
Sorry
yeah.
about that. Get confused.
Maybe tomorrow, depending on the slopes.
Right. And as usual, we have a big week for you from Electrek News, EV World, and Tesla, as usual. I think the biggest news this week that was the most surprising was Tesla's board of director releasing the Elon Musk, the CEO and chairman, this new CEO compensation plan. We already knew about Elon Musk's 2012 compensation plan, which included a bunch of milestones that gave us like a roadmap for what Tesla was planning over the next few years. But he reached most of those milestones at that point. A few were left in terms of gross profit, maintaining some gross profit target, and profitability. But in terms of reaching like building prototypes and reaching volume production and things like that were already accomplished. So we were expecting either Elon was going to step back from his role as CEO, something that he intended before, or moving to a new compensation plan since he's not taking any salary from Tesla. He hasn't been since the beginning of the company. He always been compensated with stock option. So right now, what we're seeing with the new compensation plan is it's solely based now on Tesla reaching new milestone in terms of market capitalization, which is the actual value of the company, the net worth of the company. And those milestones are matched with profitability milestone based on adjusted EBITDA, which is the profit before taxes and interest, and actual revenue too. Yes.
Yeah, so it's quite interesting to see that Tesla anticipates getting to these pretty high market cap numbers. They even write 650 billion within a 10-year period as one of the possible milestones, which that's getting into the top 2 or 3 companies in the world. Current market cap.
Apple, Google size. We're talking about Apple,
Right.
Google size here. But it's definitely an ambitious plan. But people said the same thing about the previous one, which was also based on market capitalization going up to 43 billion. And if you look back then when that was first introduced in 2012, most people were saying that was ridiculous too. So even though I'm very optimistic about Tesla's future, I'm tempted to see that's a crazy. Those are crazy numbers, 400 billion, 650 billion. But knowing what happened the first time, I wouldn't say that's not achievable either. But it's also encouraging in terms of, if you look at just the revenue, first milestone is around 20 billion a year and 1.5 billion of adjusted EBITDA, which I don't think could be achievable this year. So we wouldn't see Elon Musk reaching his first milestone if the plan is approved, because that was the board of director worked on that for the last 6 months, they said, and now they are bringing it up to the unveil this week, and they are bringing it to a vote for shareholders, so the shareholders get to vote on it. And I would assume that Elon Musk will not vote since he has like 20% of the shares, but the rest of the shareholders will be able to vote on this.
Yeah, I think Elon's out of both the putting this up. He wasn't part of the plan, and neither was his brother Kimball, and then he's not going to be part of the vote, obviously.
Yeah, because that's interesting too, because if you guys remember from last year, there were a lot of talk about the fact that there weren't enough independent board member at Tesla. People were not only Elon, he's on the board with his brother, but people made a lot of links also between him and other board members, like Steve Jurvetson, for example, who doesn't have any family links with Elon, but he's been a long-time investor and friend with Elon. He's also an investor on at SpaceX and on the board of SpaceX. So
I think he's on leave right now, though, from both.
Yeah, he's on leave right now. He's been caught up in the Me Too movement. There's been allegation against him. We don't know the details, so we wouldn't speculate on it.
But there was that party at his house.
Apparently a boring party, according to Elon. But yeah, there are other people too that have business link with Elon in other companies. Mainly, we're talking about SpaceX. Used to be SolarCity too before they joined those two together, and that's actually what brought a lot of those concerns, since people had link between Tesla and SolarCity. So when Elon suggested to join both companies together, it put on some red flags for a few investors. There were a proposal to have more independent board member, which he ended up doing. They added the Fox News guys, not Fox News, the News Corp, which is part of News Scoop, which is part of Fox News, is part of News Corp. And another board member from the retail world, I think, or the publishing world. There were two people for the publishing world, if I remember correctly. Completely independent from Elon and Tesla in general. So those people were on the committee, I assume, to put this new CEO performance award plan together. And what we're taking out, the main takeaway point from this plan, I think, is that it looks like if it goes through, Elon is committing to stay at the company for 10 years, because that was just not clear for a while. I don't know if you remember said, but at one point Elon said that he doesn't expect to stay CEO forever, especially since he was very close to SpaceX. He appeared closer to SpaceX than Tesla since he founded the company since the start.
Yeah, and I believe specifically he said that after the Model 3 launch, he doesn't know if he's going to stick around. And
yeah, he said that. He said once he reached volume production of Model 3, he might leave. So that was an interesting point, because have we reached volume production on Model 3? We're around 2,000 a week apparently. So adjusted with the last few days of 2017 at least, which could be considered volume production by some. So a lot of people fear that will mean Elon leaving, but apparently not, since that's a new proposal. It remains to see will go through. But yeah, so that's the main takeaway. I think Elon staying as CEO, because he always said too that he was never leaving Tesla, though it was maybe just stepping down as CEO, but remain chairman of the board, major shareholder, and possibly also his role as a first they were talking about they were saying he was the product architect.
Yeah, product architect, which is kind of like the Steve Jobs role.
Yeah, but I don't know if you realize, but in the press release about the new CEO performance award plan, the board referred to him as not as product architect, but as chief product officer now. So it's not, he is holding two different C-level executive role at Tesla right now. Which is interesting.
What's also kind of interesting is JB Straubel is probably most people's choice as the second, the next CEO of Tesla if Elon steps down, and he hasn't been very visible lately.
True.
In the last couple of events, he hasn't been around. He wasn't on stage. He was clearly there at both events, but he wasn't part of the show.
Well, he's in charge of the Gigafactory. I think he's an important part of the Gigafactory, and we know that Gigafactory was a big part of the bottleneck for the ramp up of the production L with the Model 3. So I think he's on that like full time now. So
I just wonder if he was being groomed previously to
It seemed like that at one point, right?
It did seem like that, and that to me, I felt like he's a strong engineering executive that would be a good next CEO. So I wasn't as stressed out about that as a lot of people were.
Yeah. Good.
But now it doesn't seem like Elon's going anywhere for quite a bit of time, which is will keep a lot of people happy.
Yeah, obviously he's chief technology officer at JB Straubel, but like you said, it looked like at some point it was being groomed. It was being more front and center role at Tesla, and he's also like a great. He speaks very well as a very well-spoken person, and he's a great. I think was a great communicator of the reason why we need to move to electric vehicles and everything. So I think at that level, yeah. because if you look, that was interesting this week. Right after the plan came out, Morgan Stanley went out with a new note, and they were especially talking about that, like if the plan doesn't go through for whatever reason, who's the next second in line to become CEO at Tesla, and that's Jonah.
Adam
Adam
Jonas.
Jonah,
Yeah.
Adam Jonas, yeah, who's been following Tesla incredibly well for the past few years, and even him, he was like, "Oh, I'm not sure if there's a clear second person in line to take over." Because
That's a bit surprising. I mean, as far as analysts go, I think Adam Jonas is probably the best, at least major banking analyst.
yeah, but if you look at companies that size, that Tesla size, when there's a transition from a founding CEO, which officially Elon is a founding CEO, uh, moving to like they go bigger, and they normally they bringing a CEO from the outside. I think so maybe that's why he wasn't seeing JB as a potential second in command. But yeah, like you said, right now it looks like Elon is in for at least another 10 year.
Well, he's got the compensation package to make it. If Tesla executes, and we should also mention that in a earnings call about a year or two ago, he made some comparisons to like Tesla could grow to the size of Apple.
Yeah, he did say that a few times. Yeah.
So it's clearly been on his mind, and in the backdoor meetings or what do you want, Elon? He's probably like, look, if I can make this company the biggest company in the world, or up there with the biggest companies in the world, I should be the richest man in the world, right? So
yeah, so that's the one thing that we didn't mention yet, like you just said it. But yeah, if he goes through with the entire all the 10 milestone that you need to reach, for each milestone you get 1.6 million shares. So that increases stake by 1 full percent every time he reach a milestone, if there's no other dilution, that because Tesla could be raising more money and issuing more stock too, so there should be more dilution at some point. But assuming there's not, it gained 1% at each milestone. Within 10 years, it's 1% per year. He's already at, just over 20%.
Yeah, and that value would be compounding as well. So
yeah, so it would bring over 30% his stake in the company, which would be worth 650 billion at that point, which make his own stake work around $200 billion, making him the richest man on earth. If
as long as Bezos doesn't go,
yeah,
double his value.
Yeah, because Bezos is at 105 right now, so he probably gonna still grow his net worth too. But assuming he doesn't grow at the same pace, Elon would be the richest man on earth just based on his own stake in Tesla, because he's also has a stake in SpaceX, which is
right now. And that's assuming SpaceX doesn't blow up, money wise, and also all the other things he's doing, like the Boring Company, and
because a lot of people assume
Hyperloop,
but think that SpaceX could be worth more than Tesla at one point, with the size of the anticipated growth of the space industry, which is growing incredibly fast right now on the commercial side. And SpaceX is just capturing a huge percentage of that. So, and for those reasons, for the reason that the goal to colonize Mars is such a huge one, that people thought that Elon would maybe focus more on that. And once Tesla seems to be going fine on its own, just gradually move more toward working for
well,
SpaceX.
it's a whole lot easier to colonize Mars if you have $200 billion to spend on it.
Yeah, also because he's been looking for a way to finance that, which isn't easy. I mean, the last thing that he unveiled was actually turning the same rocket booster that he was planning to use to go to Mars to use as a transportation system on Earth, which is kind of crazy if you ask me. But I mean,
that's the one other thing. So this kind of almost has a Tesla connection. They're working with Google on SpaceX is working on with Google and a couple other companies on a kind of an Iridium satellite internet, but a high speed satellite internet. Yeah. And theoretically Tesla vehicles could use that network. There's the tie. So there's yet another possible huge money making operation.
Yeah. Well, Google is a big investor in SpaceX too, so there's also a link there. But yeah, other than that, I think that covers pretty well the 2018 CEO Performance Award plan that the board unveiled for Elon. That's gonna go on a vote in 2 weeks, so just around the same time that Tesla's gonna be unveiling is releasing their fourth quarter and full year 2017 result first week of February. So that's coming soon, and the vote's gonna be around the same time. They haven't released the exact date yet, but I think they are going for the same day. So we should know on the same day if the plan went through, which doesn't mean much on the short term. If the plan goes through, like I said, I don't think the first milestone is achievable within this year. With 20 billion on revenue would mean a huge growth for the Model 3. Unless things like Tesla Energy surprises or something like that, but I doubt it.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, so this is a good segue to go into the Tesla shares CNBC story this week.
Yeah, that was just yesterday actually that happened.
Yeah, and
So,
you know, anytime you're quoting Mark Siegel, you're kind of jumping the shark already. But yeah, Tesla responded to this story, which it's funny. We had gotten some anonymous tips.
Comments directly on our articles.
Yeah, comments on our articles that kind of mirrored these statements. So I wonder if this person went to CNBC or whatever. But overall,
Gigaman Envy was the person that commented on it.
Yeah, they're not like terribly of course, as you ramp up, you're going to need to do some manually building batteries and
Yeah, well, to come back to, if we just for people who are not aware of the situation, what happened is that CNBC published a report based on anonymous Tesla employees, current and former Tesla employees, and the report said that there are going to be future delays in the Model 3, more delays than the 2,500 a week that Tesla needs to achieve by the end of the quarter, and quality issues too. But the thing is that they base that on the production status from mid-December for the Model 3. And so Tesla has a full debunk on that we posted on the website. They have like a 1,000-word a statement debunking the actual report, which they call misleading and misinformed. But yeah, you started talking about the timing of it.
Yeah, it's funny because they seem to be all queued up to have a big stock drop, and they did, but these are just kind of blips. And of course, like they quoted shorts who obviously have every incentive to take down the company in the article. So
yeah, like you said, if you quote Mark Siegel on your report, like you just lost 90% of the credibility of your report with that, because the guy has been so wrong so many times for so many years about Tesla, and the guy has been shorting Tesla for since 2012 or something.
I don't know how he has any money left.
Yeah, I'm not sure he has much money left. Well, he probably has other investment too, so I don't want to assume anything. But and like his comment on the report was, again, like out of nowhere, like Tesla's not going to be able to make money on a $40,000 Model 3. You don't know that. We don't know that. Like probably Tesla doesn't know that at that point. Like they're not making the car yet. So who's to say that if they reach 150 bucks per kilowatt hour battery pack from the Gigafactory, and they make 5,000 car a week, I'm sure they can reach a decent gross margin on that. Like it's certainly possible. But the way he's talking, saying that's impossible. You can't say that. It's for sure. It's a possibility. But yeah, the biggest problem with the report, in my opinion, it was based on the status of production. Like they were saying that it was manual production mid-December, and right. Tesla itself admitted on the first week in January when they released the production report that the production only ramped up on the last few days on December, so that wasn't new. We knew that there wasn't any significant production in December. Well, there were a few production, but like a few hundred per week maximum. And at the end of December, it went to 1,000 per week if you extrapolate the last 3 days of the week. So of course there weren't any significant production before that. But so that's the first thing. The other thing was the quality issue, which was a lot scarier in my opinion. We're talking about since the assembly of the model, part of the assembly of the battery model was done manually. It wasn't precise as like a robot, and battery cell would end up touching each other, which apparently one of the employee that talked to CNBC said that it was going to be a safety issue. But Tesla published a full debunk of it, saying that since it had the same voltage, it wouldn't be a safety issue. But even then, they do a quality control check that to make sure that they're not touching. So I don't know. It's he said, she said situation, in my opinion. Who do I trust most on that? Like, I think it's obvious here.
Right.
But so the main takeaway, I think, is like take this report with a grain of salt. And especially since all the anecdotal evidence that we have in the last few weeks is that things are increasing rapidly for the Model 3. Like Tesla this week has started East Coast deliveries for non-Tesla employees, for regular customers. They send out new batches of invitation for to configure your Model 3 and place your order. And those
for day 2 people.
Come again?
Day 2 people are getting their... people who ordered the day after.
Yeah, well, not even just the second day. No, it's more than that. Like, it's just beyond the first day, but they also like first week and stuff like that. So not just the second day people.
But still Tesla owners.
Yeah. Though I received like two reports today that people saying that they're not Tesla owners and they're able to configure right now.
Oh, wow.
I haven't been able to confirm that yet. But that's the thing too, guys. If you're a Model 3 reservation holder, don't just look at your emails right now and your junk mail and things like that. If the Tesla email slipped through, go look at your actual Tesla account and see there, because I got a lot of reports from people saying that they just ended up checking their account, and they had access to configure the Model 3 and to place their order, and it says they would get the car in 4 weeks without ever receiving an email to tell them that they had access to the Model 3 configurator. So wait until the podcast is over and after go check your Tesla account.
No, I'm checking it right now.
Well, you already had your reservation.
You know what? So, this is definitely anecdotal, but I was November to January, and I got the invitation to configure in the beginning of January, which takes 4 weeks, and now we're getting toward the end of January, and I'm kind of surprised I haven't gotten the announce that my car is on the way. So hopefully by next podcast, I'll even have the car by then, but hopefully they'll have at least a delivery date. It looks like I'm not going to make the end of January, which was my window previously. So, that's kind of a bummer. But
we got report this week of deliveries in New York for customers, for regular customers.
Just started, and they started in Red Hook and also in the city, in the Chelsea store. And I haven't heard anything about Mount Kisco, but I'm sure that's where I'll be picking up mine.
Yeah. People in the comments right now are talking about Bob Lutz, father of the Cadillac EDR. Yeah, I don't have a lot of love for Bob Lutz. I think he's just like too stuck in the past. I mean, and it's understandable. Look, the guy is like, what, he's 80 years old now, like in his 70s or 80s.
No, he's a big cigar smoker. He's probably like 55.
No, because he's been in the industry for over 50 years, so unless he started as a baby. But I mean, the guy has been like a lot like Siegel. He's been Spiegel. I never know the process name of the big Tesla short. And the guy think that climate change is not man-made, like, or at least the most recent phase in climate change, like the recent global warming that we're seeing. Human didn't contribute to that. So I mean, starting from that point, you lose a lot of credibility to start with. But furthermore, like on Tesla specifically, the guy has been wrong so many times, and not just wrong, but he based his opinion on lies. Like, for example, when he was saying that Tesla just is losing money on every car, that's not true. Like the gross, they have a gross profit on the car. No, we're talking about S and X, and the Model 3 wasn't in production back then when he said that. And but he was saying that since Tesla was losing money overall because they were reinvesting all the operating profit that were making from Model S and X in building more stores and building the supercharger network and everything. So he doesn't see a way to make money selling electric vehicles, so he thinks that it's impossible for Tesla to do so. But he thinks that based on GM selling electric vehicles, and since they've never been able to make money doing it while he was at GM, he project that into all other automakers out there, which I think is not a good logic to apply here, because GM wasn't able to make money on the Volt for years. Now apparently they are starting to well, they were for a little time at the peak of the Volt maybe. Now the Volt is on this descent because of the Bolt EV coming to market. And they are apparently not making money on that too. So on that point, he's right. But they are not investing in 5,000 vehicle a week for the Bolt. They are doing like 5,000 vehicle a quarter. So, are you hearing me all right?
I'm still here. Are you still there?
No, it was me. I pulled a cable with my foot. I was too excited talking about Bob Lutz. It got me too excited with Bob Lutz.
Who's apparently 85 years old. That's incredible.
Yeah, in the comments they're saying 85, 86 this February. Oh,
like, good for him. Jeez. I mean, he smokes cigars and he doesn't look like he's dying.
Yeah. But you can retire, Bob. You live a long career. You can retire now. You don't. Your comments on the industry, I don't think are
it's frustrating because Bob Lutz obviously was involved with the Volt and I guess theoretically somewhere in the early stages of the Bolt, he had the opportunity with the EV1 and blew it. Clearly he's like the antithesis of the he was the kind of like the bad character and who killed the EV, the electric car. So this guy, it's just time for him to, as you say, he can just go away, and it would be nice if like the cable news networks would just stop talking.
Yes, CNBC are big fan of him. Like, and CNBC invited me once to comment on the show. I mean, CNBC, if you're listening right now, put me with Bob and let's debate EVs and Tesla in particular, since his main concerns appear to be with Tesla, not EVs in general, because at least plug-in hybrids, he's fine with plug-ins. Apparently, it's
doesn't he? Isn't he like leading a show or isn't he leading a company? I can't remember the name. That
Via Trucks.
Yeah, no, it's the company that changes trucks into EVs.
Yeah, they're buying chassis and putting like, I think it's Via Trucks, VV Trucks.
Oh yeah, Via or something.
No, Via Motors, and they're making the Via Trucks, something like that. But he's making plugins out of pickup trucks and everything. But I think it's like they didn't deliver too many trucks. I think it's just VLF Automotive, like James Crockford in the comment just said. Yeah, that's the other way around though. That's these other companies that is taking chassis from Fisker, which was a plug-in hybrid, and he's putting Corvette motors in them. So that's the other way around. You're taking a partly electric vehicle into a fully gas-powered one. So that's he's all over the place. The guy doesn't think he can make money on electric vehicles, which is wrong. Moving on. What were we talking about? Oh yeah, the CNBC article. So CNBC then. What was weird too is like they posted the report, and right after the stock dropped, and then they comment on the fact like they right away they tweeted, "Hey, the stock dropped. It was like look what we did here."
It was very weird.
Yeah, that's sometimes uncomfortable, but I think that if you go to Electrek and you can only read the full debunk from Tesla from
that was quite a debunk. That was like 1,000 words almost.
Yeah, so you can assume that Tesla was working with CNBC before they posted the article, and
they were ready for it.
Yeah, they tried to probably tried to convince the CNBC not to publish that if they are calling it extremely misinformed and misleading. And CNBC decided to go ahead with it. So they released their debunk. It's on Electrek right now if you want to go read it. The article is titled Tesla shares fall after CNBC claims more delays for the Model 3 and qualities issue. If we're staying on Model 3, do we have anything else? We already said that Tesla expanded also the fleet, the display car fleet. So if you want to see the Model 3 in person, now you have a lot of places you can go to. Tesla doubled the fleet this week with stores
but still prepare to wait. We're hearing lines of like an hour or more in California. I think it's the same in New York, and it's much colder in New York.
Yeah, they have a new store in Newport Beach that they got the Model 3, and apparently like it's being mobbed right now, and there's an hour-long line. Someone told me also in San Diego, there were a ton of people waiting in line. That was the new store. So those are the two stores in California. Then you have one in Dallas too, and one in Washington D.C. And well, I don't have up-to-date reports on those, but I would assume that there's still a lot of people there.
Yeah, in Boston and New York as well.
Yeah, Boston and New York from last week, and last week were mobbed. So I'm not sure if it's still the case a week later, since the car is still there apparently. But yeah, it's something to think about if you plan to go see the car.
Yeah, give yourself some time.
Moving on to Tesla Autopilot, we have news about the Autopilot this week. It's back under federal investigation from both the NHTSA and the NTSB, both federal agency regulating safety for road safety.
Yeah. You know what? I'm just looking at the picture of this. So this was when this blacked out Tesla was apparently going on autopilot and hit the back end of a fire engine. You know, I'm just looking at this car now, and it's clear that there's like a bunch of tint over everything. And I'm looking at the front, and there's actually tint on the front, and I'm wondering if there's any tint over the front cameras.
Yeah, since the camera is behind the windshield, you're saying
right.
that if they added tint to the windshield, it could have screwed with the perception from the camera.
Yeah, maybe. I don't know.
The other thing though that I'm seeing now is like, is it? It looks like a first gen Autopilot, right? I don't see any camera in the fenders, and I don't see.
Yeah, it's hard to tell because there's like kind of some bending there.
But yeah, so the story is that earlier this week in Culver City, Los Angeles, California, on the highway there was a parked fire engine, and a Tesla Model S, reportedly on autopilot, according to the driver, was driving 65 miles per hour and ran directly into the truck. The driver was apparently fine, was able to get out by himself, and he refused medical attention.
Which is like kind of weird because he was apparently going 65 miles per hour.
Yeah, it was a big crash.
hitting a fire truck going 65 miles per hour, it's pretty crazy.
Yeah, like if you maybe the Autopilot was set up at 65 miles, but I'm not sure if you ran into the thing at 65 miles.
Right. Yeah, it doesn't look like it.
Yeah, it doesn't look like it. It looks bad, but it doesn't look 65 miles per hour bad. But so we've seen that before. We've seen that a few times before. And the first investigation from the federal agencies happened after the fatal crash that happened in Florida in 2016, I think. Yeah. And that's what prompted the first investigation into the Autopilot, and it didn't result in any kind of penalty on the Autopilot or Tesla. The NHTSA said that Papa wasn't at fault in it. It didn't malfunction or anything. It's just that the driver wasn't apparently paying attention. A similar thing for the NTSB, but they put some blame on Autopilot, meaning that because that the owner didn't pay attention because of the Autopilot, which like it's a fair point to a degree, but ultimately both agencies agree that the responsibility falls into the driver to stay alert, which Tesla try to promote as best they can, but apparently doesn't work.
Yeah, I mean, it keeps happening, and
Yeah,
Tesla's, I think, at this point very clear that like the autopilot is kind of like cruise control, where it helps you, and you're supposed to actually like keep your eyes on the road and
it's a
keep your
driver assist.
keep your hands on the wheel
Yeah, it's a driver assist system. It's not a
in its
driver
current form. Like
replacement system.
at some time in the future, it may be able to drive by itself, but clearly
Yeah,
that's not the case now.
so that's where Tesla has some blame, since they still they promote the fact that the system is ready for, like, the hardware is ready, is there. That's where some confusion can come from. If you buy the car and you think it's self-driving ready, because that's how Tesla presents it, but ready with future software update. So people are always waiting for, the next update that I get. Maybe that's going to be when the self-driving car is ready, and it's not. So ultimately, it's a lot of consumer education issue at some point. Also, the better it gets, the more confident people are about it, and of course they're confident, because even if I'm listening to some people that I know are experienced Tesla driver, and they are aware that they need to stay alert all the time and be ready to take over, even those people sometimes will just, I can go take something in the back seat or something if I'm autopilot, which is dangerous. Like, as soon as you stop looking forward and you start looking around, it becomes dangerous. Even though it can be safer, but that if you're not on autopilot, of course, but it's still dangerous. And we've seen plenty of people blame it since that accident, since the fatal accident in 2016. It was like a big thing for a while. Almost every week there was a crash, and people were blaming the crash on the autopilot to some degree. That seemed to have stopped for a while, like for almost a year, starting like almost like early 2017 to just now in 2018. We didn't receive any reports of people blaming things on autopilot, but now in just 2 weeks,
Yeah, I'm
we have.
seeing actually on the live chat that James Crockford mentions that he said he was behind a pickup truck with the AP engaged. I wonder if this was one of the cases where.
Well, that's no. Well, that's based on a guy on. Yeah, now he's putting the source here and the Reddit user. Yeah, that's based on a guy that says that was his dad's friends that was driving. So we weren't able. I saw that, but I wasn't able to confirm it. So I'm not sure it's 100%. But yeah, the story of that user is that, which makes sense, by the way, too. But like I said, we couldn't confirm it. He was following a pickup truck, and the pickup swerved to not crash into the truck. So that was assuming that was the lead car that the pilot was following, and since it swerved out of the lane, autopilot kept going. But what I didn't like about that comment was that he said that because the pickup truck that was following was too big, too tall, it couldn't see the fire truck in front. But mainly
the autopilot should see it though.
Use the radar, and we'll use the radar. It will go under the truck, not over the truck. The pickup truck in front, in any vehicle in front of it, it will go under the vehicle instead of going over. So I didn't see much value in that comment, and since I couldn't confirm it either, we didn't run it with anything. So last week we had also someone blame a problem on the autopilot, but that was obviously nonsense, since the guy on the Bay Bridge in San Francisco, in the Bay Area, and once the police showed up, he said, "Oh, the car was on autopilot. That's why it stopped in the middle of nowhere, and I fell asleep." Of course, like it's not an excuse for anything.
Someday maybe you can
Yeah.
get into a car drunk and have it drive you home, but that day is
What's
not today.
interesting? Yeah, what's interesting about that, though, is if he was truly on autopilot, and maybe the autopilot did stop on its own, like, because if you're on autopilot and you ignore too many put your hand on the steering wheel alerts, the car will eventually slow down on its own and to a stop. We don't know that that's what happened, but if it was truly on autopilot, that's a possibility.
Yeah.
So right now, what's going to happen next? It's the two agencies are going to perform their investigation. They apparently both sent investigator in California to look into the accident. We're not talking about this accident, but the Culver City accident with the fire truck, because a lot of publications confused both, and there were a bunch of reports that were saying that someone drunk ran into a truck and blamed Autopilot on it, which is not what happened. And actually, we didn't have any report that the guy actually blamed the accident on Autopilot. He just told the firemen that the firefighters that the car was on Autopilot, but that comment that James reference to from Reddit said that the guy actually took responsibility for it, even though it was on Autopilot. So we're not sure exactly what happened, but it should be a much easier investigation than the Florida investigation, of course, because they actually have the driver, and the driver is not dead. So you can give an insight into what happened. Tesla should technically have the data too, but yeah, we're gonna wait on the reports from both agencies to follow on that.
Yeah, I'm actually interested to see what they say about the blackout. It's a significant. I mean, he blacked out, all the silver in the whole car, and it's clear that he even blacked out the front windshield. So that might be part of the issue.
Yeah, well, that's a good point.
So should we move on to energy?
To Tesla Energy?
Yeah, they more news from Australia.
Yeah, that's a lot of people are fascinated by the batteries, and with good reason. I think every time we report on that, we get a lot of feedback, and we're talking about the 100 megawatts / 129 megawatt hour power pack system that Tesla installed in South Australia last year, and it went into operation in December. So it's been running for about 2 months now, and at first the battery just like it's some expert called it like just showboating. It was testing a few of its features and how it can perform, like how fast it can go online if a coal generator, for example, fails, and the battery can compensate. So it did a few things like that. It was impressive on its own, but ultimately for the long term, the real use of the battery is split into two parts. Some of the capacity is used by Neoen, which is the wind power companies that operates the Tesla power pack, and the other part is used by the government to stabilize the national grid, with, like we said, in case a generator that a peak power plant fails to compensate for a loss in power and frequency, the power pack comes in and fix it. But so that reality scene works. In terms of Neoen's part, that's just playing the market with wholesale prices. If they sell electricity when the prices are high, and they charge the battery when the prices are low. Very simple. Or they charge it actually with their own power, since they have a wind farm right next to it. And what happened last week that was interesting is that if we look at the power reserve of the power pack system, it looks like it could have made up to $1 million in just a few days.
Right, that's actually profiting from taking energy off the grid, which is kind of an abstract concept.
Yeah.
But when Australia is overproducing, they need to take energy off the grid, and it just so happens that if the battery is programmed right, it should be able to charge using that energy. So theoretically, it's hitting $1,000 per megawatt hour, and it could have done that for 1,000. Or it could have picked up
1,000. It goes up to 14,000. They were selling electricity up to 14,000 per megawatt hour at one point.
Right. So yeah, and it kind of goes up by the amount that it needs to charge. And Australia's Renew Economy reported that it could have cleared up to $1 million in the last few days from the time of the report, which is kind of impressive. Like I can't remember how much the project cost, but if it pulls in $1 million every couple of weeks, that's
I think
pretty.
estimates are 50 million.
Yeah, so a
Yeah.
couple years and it's going to pay for itself, and then
Yeah, even potentially less than that. So the what happened here is there were a lot of odd days. I think like a few region in Australia were experiencing heat waves, which of course like everyone is running their ACs when that happened and everything. So it creates big bumps in demand when the prices go up crazy, like $14,000 per megawatt hour. But in the lulls though, when demands crash, Tesla was basically able to charge a battery for almost nothing. So that's a $14,000 profit per megawatt hour that you deliver to the grid. So that's where the money is, and so the payback period becomes incredibly attractive at that point, which is why we were seeing a bunch of other projects coming up with batteries at the utility scale that we're seeing with this power pack in South Australia. We're talking about similar 2 or 3 projects of similar size coming in Australia too, and an even bigger one that's being priced right now, and Tesla is apparently bidding on it. Also, for the same reason, to balance the demand on the utility electricity market in Australia, and people are trying to take advantage of it with the home battery pack too. We just reported earlier today of a community that's doing a knockdown rebuild home, where they just knock down a home and rebuild on top of it, and they are including power walls for all of those homes. So that's 50 homes that's going to have a power wall each, and they're also seeing a payback period extremely quick because of the crazy prices right now. That the same that you see at the utility scale comes down on a smaller scale at the residential market. So you can take advantage of it with a rooftop installation or a solar rooftop installation. You feed that into your batteries, and you send that into the grid as soon as the prices go up, and your 5,000 install, I think it's closer to like $7,000 power wall, can pay for itself in like 4, 5, 6 years.
Yeah, it's because of these peaker power plants are very expensive to run, and they're very dirty, and they're not a great solution. But as soon as you start going past what all the production in the area can do, you got to have these peaker plants that are very expensive, and basically the demand charges at that point make any kind of make selling back into the grid very lucrative. And if you have these big batteries, or and solar panels and wind, you can kind of gauge when those things are going to happen. You can almost look at the weather forecast and say, oh, it's going to be 80 degrees for the next three days and sunny. Everybody's going to have their air conditioning on. Let's power up charge up these batteries to full, because we're going to be able to sell this energy at a really high rate. So this is the kind of thing that this happens all over the world. Australia is probably an outlier in terms of the scale of, the cost goes way, way, way up, because they have very few peaker plants, and they're, basically having brownouts. But these things happen all over the world, and, particularly in places like Germany, where they have, a lot of green energy and very high electric prices. So this is a good thing for Tesla Energy, because this is kind of showing that their model and this product is something, these power packs, the product can actually pay for itself quite quickly.
Yeah, the demand is going crazy just from seeing what it can do. People like, I want to stake in that, and those projects. Any energy storage project right now, especially in Australia, will be green lighted in a second because of what we're seeing right now. But moving on to another thing that of interest this week that we reported was the first Tesla connector added to a public fast charger that was mainly using CCS CHAdeMO combo. They ended up adding a Tesla connector, but that's in Europe, that's in Switzerland. So Tesla in the US and North America, they use their own connector, proprietary connector that's not used by anybody else. but in Europe they use the Type 2 connector, which is the same that people the other companies will use, other automakers use for a level 2 charging, and Tesla use it for level 2 charging, but also for their supercharger network in Europe. So what a company did, a third-party network that is building a fast charging network in Switzerland, excuse me, they ended up adding a Tesla connector to their fast charging station, which basically just ends up being a convenience feature. Instead of using an adapter, Tesla owners can just pull up to the station and use the fast charging station directly. But of course, it's a lot slower than just using a supercharger, which is actually the weirdest part, because there's 2 superchargers very close to that station. So normally a Tesla owner would just stop at a supercharger instead of use at this one. But it was interesting on its own that it was the first station that has CCS, CHAdeMO, and fast charging a Tesla connector. But what happened here, which was kind of interesting, is that we posted that article. We didn't reach out to Tesla about it since it wasn't a Tesla project. We knew that it was just the company was doing it, which is the Go Fast network in Switzerland. The company actually doing the hardware is called Electrek. But the first person that commented on the article, MG Boys, speculated that what they were doing is using the Tesla's European CHAdeMO adapter, which go from CHAdeMO to Type 2. So that's like a $400 adapter that Tesla sells for Tesla owners to use the public CHAdeMO station. And he speculated that the company is buying those chargers that are freely, not freely, they are accessible on Tesla's website, and just dismantling those adapters and building it right into their own station. And sure enough, a few hours after I published the article, Tesla reached out and said that that's what they are doing, and they aren't happy about it. They sent me a statement saying that despite I'm quoting right now, despite repeated discussion and warnings, Electrek continue to use damaged and dismantled Tesla DC adapter for a charging service they promote. So they're also not happy about the fact that they're using the logo and everything. But if you look at the actual connector, they put a tape on the Tesla logo. So it's not, they're not actually using the logo. Maybe they were using it at first, and that's why Tesla wasn't happy. But they're also saying that they use damage and dismantle Tesla DC adapter, which is the CHAdeMO adapter that we were talking about.
I mean, I don't know how damaged it was. It was working, but maybe damaged in that they took it apart and they put it all behind a little box or something.
Yeah, maybe they just didn't put it correctly. Not up to Tesla standards, but like you said, it was working, but at 44 kilowatts.
Right. So CHAdeMO, actually, that Tesla adapter will only work to 50 kilowatts at most, and usually that's a little bit below. But what's kind of interesting about this to me is that anytime that a company has put a Tesla adapter on their charging solution, Tesla has come out like very aggressively against it, which it kind of goes against their we want to be open to everybody kind of thing. We're sharing patents. This is just a CHAdeMO adapter permanently attached to a Tesla CHAdeMO adapter permanently attached to a charging station, with some tape and whatever over it. It's, to me, it's not a huge deal. Like, I guess it's fine. You're getting 44 kilowatts, which is, not a super fast charge, but it'll get you in and out in probably an hour or so. I don't see any problem with it personally. It would be nice if Tesla made those a little bit more easy to get for charging vendors. When I say that Tesla has done this before, at CES last year, ChargePoint had actually put a Tesla charger, and I believe that was only a level 2, on one of their level 2 chargers, which kind of was a stunt. And I think the CEO, Pascal yeah, can't remember his last name, but he was saying, a couple of the people at ChargePoint have it, and they don't want to, bring their adapters, so they just built a ChargePoint with a Tesla adapter on the front, which I'm assuming is a lot easier to do on level 2 than it is level 3. Anyway, basically, Tesla called him like almost immediately after our story went live, and said, take it down. Like this, you don't have a right to have a Tesla handle at your booth at CES. And literally the next day we went there, and there was no sign of it. No, nobody would talk about it. Nobody would say anything about it. It was very
That was weird.
It was very weird. So it's kind of, it's a little bit disappointing, I guess. On the level 2 side, just bring your Tesla adapter with you, and I guess what would Tesla want from a CHAdeMO station that wants to be able to serve Tesla owners? I guess, just put a CHAdeMO to Tesla adapter on a big long chain and leave it at your station, and I guess that'll keep them happy.
Yeah, that's what other networks are doing in Europe, like Fastnet, which is mainly based in the Netherlands, but they're also expanding in Germany and all over Europe right now. They simply have a mechanism to keep the CHAdeMO adapter from Tesla there, and if an owner shows up, they can just open that and use the adapter. So the actual advantage there is like a few seconds that you save from using the adapter. But to play devil's advocate here for Tesla, maybe they're right, maybe it's unsafe. We don't know for sure. We haven't been there. But yeah, otherwise you do have a good point that who cares? It's not like that doesn't make a big difference, and it does seems to go against Tesla's general open source mentality that was unveiled back in 2013, which we haven't actually seen being implemented by other companies that much.
And it doesn't seem like it's going to happen either. Like it seems like CCS is going to be the big charging standard.
Yeah,
which Tesla is a member of.
Yeah, Tesla is on the organization that is backing CCS. So we are, but they haven't materialized into any product yet, because Tesla promised way back that they were going to do a CCS adapter too, and they only did CHAdeMO so far.
Did they promise that?
Well, maybe not promised, but it was mentioned by either Elon or GB. I'm not sure. But at one point, at least he talked about it.
CCS is a little bit more complicated because you need a handshake with the car, and each car has its individual moniker. Whereas CHAdeMO is just kind of like, you ready for the charge? Here it comes, and it doesn't. You don't need to have like a unique identifier. So
yeah, Justin mentioned that it's probably a legal liability thing. That's probably right too. If something happened, and if it's a Tesla adapter, and Tesla can be liable for it.
Right.
That's a good point. Yeah, once the lawyers get involved, man, it's
yeah. I mean, I guess they have to come out really hard against this, at least, so that when somebody electrocutes themselves on it, they can say, "Hey, look, we did everything we could."
Yeah, I think the main thing about using Tesla's charging technology for other companies and opening the patents, I think the main idea behind doing that was that other automakers, Tesla would license for free their charging technology to receive a supercharge from a supercharger, and the company will just have to pay Tesla a fee to have access to the supercharger based on the utilization from their fleet, which makes a lot of sense. But so far, Tesla apparently didn't find any takers for that.
Yeah, and when people have asked Tesla execs about that possibility, they're always like, well, nobody else is building a car that can accept the rate of charge that supercharger can deliver, which is true to a point. I think the top rate that the Chevy Bolt can take it right now is like 54 kilowatts, which is less than half of. So theoretically, a Chevy Bolt would be stuck at a Tesla supercharger for twice as long as the equivalent size Tesla.
Yeah, now that's gonna piss off current Tesla owners that are gonna wait for that. Staying on the charging news, we learned earlier this week of another ultra fast. I'm doing air quotes right now. So that's apparently the new way to refer to those 350 kilowatts charger, ultra fast electric vehicle charging networks. And in Europe, there were already two of those networks separately starting deployment right now. The Ionity network, which is backed by BMW, Mercedes, Ford, and a bunch of Volkswagen's brands. And independently, there were the Ultra E network, which was pioneered by Allego and Audi, BMW, Magna, Renault, and Object, and a bunch of other smaller companies too. So those two networks were being deployed independently from each other around Europe. But now a third network called the Mega E, again from Allego and Fortran, a bigger network with over 300 stations, same technology, 350 kilowatts charging time, also coming all over Europe right now. They announced as they were closing their financing round, and they are still looking for partners. So probably we're going to see a few automakers putting a few bucks in it. But what I take away from that news mainly is that the old continent is way ahead of us for deployment right now.
Yeah, I mean, we've got this like green lots thing that's going to put 50 kilowatt across the U.S. And that's pretty much it. You know, obviously superchargers are there and working quite well. What's kind of weird to me though is this. So first of all, you have the chicken or the egg problem of 350 kilowatts. Do you have the cars that can charge at that speed? Well, you don't have the cars because there's no chargers that can charge at that speed.
Mm-hmm.
So now they're building the chargers that could theoretically charge at that speed. We still haven't seen any cars that can even charge close to 350 kilowatts. I mean, there's some buses maybe, and obviously the Tesla Semi is going to charge that fast. But, you know, even Tesla, like we've been kind of stuck at 120 or, you know, in that general range for quite some time. Is there some kind of breakthrough that's coming that is going to allow charging at, you know, we've been stuck at 120, even 240 kilowatts would be like a huge step. And I imagine the Roadster with its 200 kilowatt hour battery could charge it around that. But, you know, it doesn't seem like we're getting further along than where we're at, which is 120. Do you foresee in the near future? I mean, I know Porsche's Mission cars are anticipated to go to 350 kilowatt, but you know,
yeah, the Mission E seems to be the only one in the pipeline right now for capable up to 350.
But we haven't seen that happen. Like nobody's actually showed that.
That's all those. Well, they did show it. They did show a 911 prototype with the technology in it at a recent EV event.
Did they show it charging?
Apparently they did at the event. They did showing in Germany. So apparently they do have the technology. It does work right now. Of course, I think pretty much any automakers can do it at 800 volts. But people are maybe not. They don't know maybe the impact yet on the battery pack, on the charging cables, and how long it works. Well, the charging cables, if 100 volts, shouldn't be a problem if you increase the voltage instead of increasing the current.
Right.
But the impact on the batteries long term, we don't know yet for sure.
Maybe it's got extra cooling systems or something.
Yeah, that's a possibility. But what those networks mainly are saying is that they're presenting it as a future-proof network. So they are building them out capable of 350 kilowatts. But right now you can charge it at 120 or whatever your car is capable of, which for most, like you said, it's going to be 50 for now, but like up to 100 with the Ioniq and so forth. So there's still those stations going to see a lot of use, but build them and they will come.
Right, theoretically.
Yeah.
And that's so also, you know, right when you first start charging, you're going to get the high kilowatt, and then it's going to rapidly go down to probably what we're used to now toward the end.
Mm-hmm.
Because, you know, full batteries can't take a charge quite as quickly. So it's not going to be like 350 from beginning to end. It's going to be 350 to start, and then it's going to go down rapidly to 175, and then
that's not expected to change with a higher charge rate. It's going to be the same thing that we're seeing now, just on a different scale. And well, we're already past an hour now, but just a quick note before we go. We also had another article we want to talk about real quick, which came out today. Speaking of supercharger, Tesla opened another 50 stall supercharger.
Yeah, these are monsters.
Yeah, that's the third one in China. So Tesla has been known to increase the number of stall per station in the recent months. We've seen a few 40 stall in Europe coming out, and one in Norway, and in the two in the US, maybe two or three in the US, but 50 stalls. There were 2 in China, and they just opened a few weeks ago. Another one in Beijing. Not much else to say about that. It's just cool.
It's crazy. When we go skiing, we stop at the one in Albany. There's a 40. It's like 42 or 40 or something like that. And it's usually like I would say 1/5 full. There's like 6 or 7 cars there usually, but I think these are being built with the Model 3 in mind. Like these are the next 10-year. Like they're going to be all this big because they're going to have tons of cars.
Yeah, those are fun to just see them coming up on the network, because it gives you an idea of what Tesla is thinking about in terms of volume for the fleet that's coming. And we've seen also like a transition from the system to being sustainable. So this week is going to be the last week for technically to buy a Model S and X with free supercharging for life if you use a referral code. Tesla did
definitely use our referral code.
Yeah, you can always use minor sets, which you can find on our website. But Tesla did extend that a few times before, so we don't know. They say on the website it's going to head next week with after the 31st. So we're going to know what's next after that. But technically it should end. And now not only all Model 3 is going to be on the paid program for the supercharger access, but also all new Model S and Model X. Theoretically, we're gonna see next week, but that's gonna make the supercharger network a lot more sustainable. So Tesla's trying to charge for the electricity on it, which is still a lot cheaper than buying gas, so nobody freaks out or anything. And they are supposed the payment system is kind of effortless. Like you don't have to do anything at the station itself. It just it does the handshake with the station. You know that it's your car, and that the payments go online. So pretty easy to do.
Yep. I'm looking forward to trying that.
No, you're not. You have it for free right now.
Yeah, and I'll still have it for free for a couple of years until but
Model 3 is coming, so your Model 3 you're gonna have to pay for it. But for your Model X right now, you're not paying. I'm not paying for my Model S, and I'm not excited for pay for it, but I'm gonna do it because it's gonna contribute to the network growing, and we expect it's gonna be fun to watch. So stick with us to keep following the progress here. Electrek.co. We are on iTunes. We are on whatever you're listening podcast on right now. In your Model S, it's on TuneIn and everything. Thanks for tuning in, guys, and we'll be seeing you next week.
Take care.